My pleasure.
All right, let's bring in our panel on this. You got Dominic Carter, of course, a political journalist and author, but he's so much more than that. New York Assemblywoman Shelley Mayer, Democrat out of Yonkers, and you thought Albany was tough. You could be down there. Right. And Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent, who you already met. I think we all thought, all right, this is a lot of posturing. They may not get to, the actual shutdown. But now that we're in it, and even after day one and after they can look at the numbers and say this is bad, you don't get the sense this is going to resolve itself in the next 24, 48 hours, 72 hours. This thing could drag on a while. Then they got to make the bet. Do we tie this into the debt limit and try and get this done once and for all? Or do we risk that they're going to read weakness here and the lunatic fringe is going to take us off that cliff? You don't know how this plays out, do you?
No, I don't really think you know how it plays out. I think, I agree with Congressman Meeks. I think at the end of the day, the American people, and that includes the people who live in the districts of the hardline Republicans who are driving this boat, they are going to say, and not in an ideological way, we need government to work. Just go find some way to make it work. And at the end of the day, usually you need a majority to change the law. If these people don't like the law, they need to get to a numerical majority or convince people to do it. But
use your district, though, if you could, at some moment, and try and give, because we all said in the sequester that it was intentionally set up that it was so dumb, the idea of sequestration, that the concept was once they do it, they're going to realize how dumb this is. They never got the lesson. So. And I've heard some Republicans today saying, hey, mail's getting delivered on time. Just like I said to the congressman, it's not so bad. Use your district as an example. Where are people who don't follow this like we do going to start feeling this, even if they don't work for the government, and say, time out, this isn't what I signed up for?
Well, I think they're going to, for example, in my district, you have your relatives come from Chicago, and you want to take them to the Statue of Liberty. Okay, that's no longer doable. You want to go and apply for an expedited passport. Any one of a number of things that ordinary people not involved in politics expect of government, they are going to get frustrated. And they're also going to get frustrated that the conversation is only about how bad America looks. I mean, they're sensitive about that. They don't want to get into the partisanship, but they don't want to be embarrassed that these adults are basically holding our government hostage. Even those that disagree with me about a million things agree government has a function. And I think most Americans feel that way. And I think it will take time, though. I don't think it's a short-term thing.
For me, Andrew, we know how the news cycle works here, what day one of the story is day two. Mm-hmm. But what stuck with me was, and we heard one of the people who work, in the science and the different departments, it just is crazy what they're doing, FAA. I mean, but the cancer trials for sick kids, that's going to become a package here. And people are going to see the face of a kid who all of a sudden they say, wait, NIH is doing what? This kid can't get cancer trials because these ding-dongs are shutting down the government for what we all know it's not going to work. That's how the news cycle you think is going to work by day 3, day 4, day 5.
But that's actually what the Republicans in the House are counting on right now, and that's why they've chosen the strategy that they have in the short term, which is we'll take a couple of pieces of this at a time. We'll take the museums and the memorials in Washington. We saw the video yesterday of the World War II veterans who couldn't get to the World War II memorial.
But explain the optics of it. They want to do a clean resolution. So
right.
They're not tying Obamacare to it. They're forcing Democrats to have to say no to...
What we're saying is instead of funding the entire federal government all at once, we're going to fund this one little section of the federal government all at once without any of the Obamacare restrictions to it. So now there's this clean version that Democrats have said that they want, which forces Democrats to vote down funding for national monuments and memorials, or for NIH funding.
You know the argument that we heard from the congressman and from the president and others, which is, wait a minute, Ted Cruz gets to decide what policy in America is? Since when? You don't give in to the demands of this. You don't do, America isn't a piecemeal country. Does that argument, I happen to believe in it, but does that resonate with the public, or do Democrats get blamed for saying no when her constituent's relative comes from Chicago to see the Statue of Liberty?
Well, to a small measure, it depends on what channel you're watching, I think we can all figure out. But look, we've been hearing from Ted Cruz for so long, and he's become something of a boogeyman in all of this. So that argument, I think, still is a solid one for Democrats. The other thing is, this didn't just happen yesterday. This didn't just happen Monday. This has been coming for months. And we've been seeing this coming for months. And I think most objective people get the sense that this is the Republicans who have shut this thing down. Certainly the polling indicates that it's Republicans who have shut this thing down. As long as Democrats don't give up that advantage, I think they'll be okay.
And Dominic, I was having a hard time articulating why this isn't just the typical baloney where it's the posturing of the two sides and they'll even go over a cliff once in a while, but it's the same old story. I saw a piece today in the Times, Tom Friedman did it, and he articulated, I think, why this is about more than that. If I could get the graphic, and again, this was from the Times from Tom Friedman, and he wrote in part, what is at stake in this government shutdown forced by the radical Tea Party minority is nothing less than the principle upon which our democracy is based. Majority rule. President Obama must not give in to hostage taking, not because Obamacare is at stake, but because the future of how we govern ourselves is at stake as well. You can't run a candy store, let alone any kind of government, if some people decide, you know, they don't even like the idea of government, so they're going to grind everything to a halt and create demands. I don't know if that's communicated to the general population, but I think that's what this is really about. It's not about Obamacare.
That's what it's always been about. And that's why the president is so strongly arguing and towing the line that he's not going to give in. And so the question becomes, are the American people going to stay and support this president for his position? Right now, Richard, that's the case. But the longer this goes on, who knows what's going to happen? You know, it's really scary because these guys and women that are part of the Tea Party group, somebody referred to them as the suicide group, and that's something I tend to agree with their actions. They're voting as a bloc, and they're holding up government. They're shaking down government. And until somebody stands up to them, and I don't think it's going to be the speaker. I really don't. I just don't see how it's going to play itself out. But I just don't see it.
I'm sorry. I don't think it's as partisan from an individual citizen's perspective. I do think they're blaming the Republicans. But I think individual citizens who are not politically active they understand the concept of majority rule, as Tom Friedman said. They understand. You know, and I was in the, you have rules, and the rules are you change laws by a process, and we all agree, and we have elections, and they have consequences, and we all agree. Win some, lose some. People understand that regardless of party affiliation or no party affiliation. And I think that they've completely overplayed their hands. I think Democrats and Republican ordinary citizens and independents, of which there are like a third in my district.
I heard Bill Clinton say, because we saw the shutdown in '96, we've seen a bunch, but this is probably, that's the closest one that we could merit to this, at least in recent times. He and Gingrich sat down at the end, and they figured out something so he could save some face.
Right.
Gingrich lost. They lost the House as a consequence of it, but it ended when they gave him something, just something to save face. I don't know what that 11th hour is, other than a clean resolution and an up and down vote. And I don't think Boehner, like Dominic says, is going to do this. I just don't see how this ends short of that. And I don't see any eagerness to do that, especially if Boehner wants to keep his job.
I don't think it's going to end nicely either. That fight in '96 was about money, and so they were able to come up with a financial way out.
This is about philosophy.
This is about philosophy and specific bits of the law, and I can't imagine that the president gives on any of that. I think this either ends with a Republican capitulation, or when the markets go through so much turmoil, which they will.
You just hit it there. You just hit it. The president earlier today, and we didn't mention this, he met with leaders of some of the biggest financial institutions and banks in New York, and it wasn't coincidence. They're getting ready because while they think this is stupidity, they're worried about the markets. What they're really worried about is October 17th. That's the debt limit. Now, I'm not going to do the whole, Schoolhouse Rock about what happens with the debt limit tonight, but trust me, spend 10 minutes and just look at the things. Forget about the Social Security checks. Forget about, actually paying our bills, etc. Once we don't make our first interest payment, the global ramification of that, really no hype here, are cataclysmics too much. It is really going to be bad. They predict here 4,000 points the market could drop in a day, okay? That's how bad the thing could get. So trust me, business is sitting on the sidelines for a while. They're not going to be quiet much longer. That might ramp up some pressure, but I still don't see this thing ending anytime soon. All right, go to our Facebook and Twitter and sound off to our question tonight. Who do you blame for this government shutdown? We asked you this yesterday, been giving us some good answers. Tomorrow we'll get to some of those right here on the air. Now, when we come back, we're going to turn to the issue that's at the very heart of this. We said it is about philosophy, but this is also, as we all know, about the signature issue of this president, Obamacare. Well, the exchanges, they opened up yesterday, as you know. We're going to review how they pan out, not just the glitches, but also the huge apparent interest in demand. How is the public reacting? RFL will get into that after this. A live shot right outside the White House. Republican leaders and Democratic leaders sitting down with the president. We're keeping an eye on that as well.